to the Raw Food Health Empowerment Show. I'm your host, Samantha Salmon, certified holistic health coach and author of You Can Afford to Be Healthy. And today I'm taking you on a sound bath journey. You know, so many times, so many of us are getting caught up with the news, politics, social media, and we start to bash ourselves and get down and get stressed out and have anxiety. And one of the things that I do to help keep myself healthy emotionally is to take time out to meditate. Sometimes it's really hard to meditate when you can't quiet the mind, and sound bathing is one fun and really relaxing tool that I use. I've done it twice in my life, and both times have been phenomenal. And you'll see on this episode what sound bathing is all about and why you should probably try it too. If you have tried to meditate, you see the value in it, you're dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, and you want to make this a regular practice, but your mind is so busy with negative thoughts, try sound bathing. Watch this episode and enjoy this really thoughtful conversation that I had with Brandon on sound bathing and how it can really lead to emotional and physical well-being. Brandon, thank you so much for this experience and for taking this time to explain to all of us what sound bath is, sound bath healing. I mean, what do you refer to it as? A meditation,
like
healing
sound
practice?
healing, sound bathing. You know, it's such a vast concept that everyone has, I think, their own way of describing it or defining it.
How did you even discover it?
That's a really good question. So ultimately, I'll start with how I discovered it. I think that might help to back the story up. When I met my wife, it was by random chance. We were walking through a parking lot and we fell in love, and she basically, if I hadn't met her, I wouldn't have met her uncle, whose name was Robert Anthony Aviles. He was a sound healer, a violinist. And so synchronistically, I'd always been a musician my whole life, and I'd always had a huge passion for art and music, and I always felt a very intuitive connection to music, but I didn't know that there was actually frequencies with emotion attached to waves of sound. And so her uncle taught me that my innate passion for music, my innate passion for sound was something more than just being like this third dimensional ego quest for making music. It was because I really connected to frequency. And so sound bathing essentially is letting your body, your auric field, your energy, your mind be bathed in vibrations of sound. Truth be told, the entire universe around us is vibration and sound waves. And so emotions actually create vibration waves, which are called subharmonic frequencies. And you know, things we say and things we do create what's called harmonic frequencies. And those harmonic frequencies create visual change in our world. So once I started to realize that with emotional intent and clean instruments, meaning like an instrument that doesn't have, can't be untuned, or it's not directed with negative intent. When you take pure intent, you can basically amplify sound, and it can be used for what people consider healing. So it's all really personal, it's objective. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you go to a sound healing session as a recipient, what's your goal, or what's your intention, I guess, for the session?
That's a good question. My direct intention would be relaxation. So if I'm on the receiving end of a sound bath, it's just to let go. Because there's something about receiving and just being in a state of constant receptivity and being passive. So for example, if you're laying on the floor in a sound bath and you have to surrender your mind, you have to surrender your thoughts and your emotions to just an experience that is undefined. It's not static, it's changing. And there's something about that that's very peaceful. And it really helps for me personally, I experience myself more as consciousness than I do as a body when I'm experiencing sound. And so it gives you that opportunity to feel yourself as a frequency and recognize that there's a part of you that knows it's in the body, but it's not the body simultaneously. And I think that's sort of a common thread that many people have during sound bathing, and that's maybe why people will call it a healing experience, is because when you're able to get outside of your mind or get outside of your emotions, even for a brief second, that can be extremely therapeutic.
Yeah.
And also when you think about, the energy that gets stuck in our auric field or in our body or in our muscles, if you have pure intent and love broadcast through your muscles in your auric field, if there's stuff that's stuck there, that can get launched right out. And it's really just alchemized because everything is frequency and everything is vibration anyways. So you can take less than vibration and sublimate that frequency with something positive.
Yeah.
That's called entrainment. So you can even take one frequency and entrain another frequency to it. And
so are you talking about like stuck stress, stuck trauma?
Right.
Okay.
It can be stuck anything. It can even be belief systems. It can be as vast or as simple as you want it to be. And here's a way to think about it. It's like the indigenous human being started off by clanking rocks together and making leaves and making percussive sounds, or by stomping their feet or patting their hands together, and this created percussion, and this percussion mimics the heartbeat, right? So the very innate quest inside of every human being is to mimic the heartbeat, and that heartbeat brings us into a state of union or connectivity, right? And then if you think about the mother's voice when a mom sings to her child when they get a boo-boo or they have a scrape, right? Your mom sings to you or she speaks to you and her voice soothes you. So we are basically programmed into allowing mimicry of heartbeat or sound to create natural soothing situations that is basically programmed in our DNA.
Yeah.
I believe that human beings are programmed with music and patterns and that sort of thing as a part of our consciousness. And so when you tap into the pattern of the heartbeat, or you allow yourself to experience music or sound that comes from a pure place, you're basically connecting to yourself.
So that had me thinking, I know I'm going all off this, but that had me thinking of like the instruments you use. Some people use different instruments.
Right.
So like when you were talking about how, different people respond to different types of sound, do you pick these instruments for you? Like,
Yeah.
Is there a personal connection
I would
there?
say so, yeah, because for me personally, I understand that drums can create ecstatic trance. And so this is why a lot of people are into the whole electronic music or the EDM scene. That's really very much patterned after ecstatic trance states where you bring together the village and everyone dances to the same beat, right? So for me, percussion instruments basically take us into that indigenous state. You take rattles. Rattles are very indigenous. Rattles are used to cleanse and break up negative energy, and it's very ceremonial. So we took a blend of ceremonial instruments and sound healing instruments, which are tuned instruments, for example. But I feel like you said, every sound healer or person who works with sound is going to be intuitively drawn towards particular instruments. And it gets to a point where you look around and, like my wife she's really into playing the heart chakra bowls. I'm really into the percussions. So it really all depends on everybody's innate, their own personal passion. And I think that's really the key of this whole thing, is getting into a primal passion state, a primal ecstatic state where it triggers you personally. And it's not about how much gear you have. I start to look around and I'm like, people start to get this ego trip about I have more sound instruments and more gongs and all that. And that's wonderful. Great if you want to collect sound instruments, but to me it's about loving the experience and sharing that experience. And I think that's what takes me personally to that humanistic state where I feel like I'm a soul animal body. And so I'm looking to share that with you and anyone else who understands that.
I don't know what it was, but there was some instrument that almost sounded like water and rocks. And it was just that. And it was so, super cool.
Ocean winds.
That's what it looks like if you could see it from there. It's hard. But just that mindfulness, and then I could feel different areas of my body just getting numb and just letting go. Like I said, I started with the stress. I have, this responsibility, and things are not going the way I planned, and it was starting to drift away and go into these different spaces, which is great because a lot of my clients deal with anxiety and stress and with trying to lose weight and eat cleaner and all this kinds of stuff that can hold on to a lot of things.
Right.
So to have these different modalities to try, especially if someone's struggling to sleep, get sufficient sleep, I can say from personal experience that this is great. Which brings me into my next question. Is this something that you can do at home in the bed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's lots of different sound meditations or guided meditations and things like that. So I'd recommend that I don't want to like promote any one person, but I will, because Jonathan Goldman's amazing. If you want to research Jonathan Goldman or search Jonathan Goldman,
YouTube channel or
yeah, he
something?
probably has a YouTube or iTunes or that sort of thing. But basically, he's a sound healer or a person who understands frequency, and he makes a lot of like nice ambient music. And so it's similar to what we're doing, but it's ambient enough that you can throw it on in the background. You don't have to physically do anything, and you can just lay in bed, listen to the sounds, and experience the sound bath and the bathing in the sound. And also, I mean, you could get like a toning bowl or something like that, or even like a fountain that creates like a water effect that has like little bells in it. They have that sort of thing now. So there are ways that you can use sound meditation in bed. I think anybody could do it, and most people usually start with like a toning bowl. That's a pretty nice basic place. But you kind of need someone to play it for you if you really want to relax. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you could
That's
do it
good
yourself.
stuff. Yeah, I've heard some people, and I don't know if it's like a ego thing, but they're like, well, it's totally different than going to a live session, which I mean, yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, because
do
there's
what you
something.
can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point with everything in life, is you do what you can do. If you can't get, you don't have access to someone else to give you a sound bath, make your own sound bath, right?
Speaking of access, you visit people. So do you just stay in this area?
No, we travel from pretty much everywhere in Southern California, Orange County, Los Angeles. We've made our name for ourselves in Orange County, but we travel. So it's whoever's in need within reason, we'll be able to plan out events or home calls or studio visits here at True Flow Yoga in Newport.
Yeah.
I've had crazy things happen having sound baths. Like I feel like my cells start to twitch, like muscle spasms that will go away. And so I would call that sort of like healing and miraculous, but I'm like safe to say that it's usually subjective.
So the muscle spasms, they're gone for good?
Oh yeah. Like anytime something gets triggered, it usually releases that area. And it's different every time.
Yeah.
It's different every time. I feel like gongs, for me personally, will take me into outer space in a good way.
Yeah.
So it's like the gong will take me way deeper. The rattles just lead me out the mind,
I definitely at one point was seeing myself in a forest. There was just so much drifting going on. It was like cosmic, and then I was just in all these different places. It was a journey for sure. There was some kind of a scientific study that was done on how water responds to sound.
Absolutely, that is correct. That's Dr. Emoto who did that, and you're absolutely correct. That's why I was sort of using the idea of subharmonics and harmonics.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. And so the thing with that is, again, in the scientific community, that's considered sort of esoteric. And so they have a hard time accepting that as like a factual, hardcore science, right? Which, come on, we're water-based beings on a water-based planet. That's grounds for collective consciousness and the ability to instantaneously manifest and heal.
Yeah.
And that's scientific, but we're getting there, right?
I see, like, probably in the next 10 years for sure they'll probably do something
Absolutely.
with that.
They're using sound, I believe, for healing processes now for surgeries or something like that. I do believe I've heard that.
For the patients or the
Yeah, I think there's actually people who are having advanced surgery and they're using sound waves.
Wow.
So we're getting to a point where it's getting pretty deep.
Yeah.
It's pretty ancient.
Yeah. When I was researching sound bath, they said it predates Christ. And so people have been using it to alleviate stress and anxiety from way back then.
Yeah.
Do you have a story or anything of someone who had trauma and used this and it helped them?
It was a part of my awakening. I had cancer 10 years ago. I had testicular cancer, and she was actually, my wife was the one that discovered it in me, and it has been an integral part of my own healing journey.
Wow.
So I had what you would consider miraculous healing, where I had 2 near-death experiences where the doctors left a surgical instrument inside of me, and if I hadn't had a roommate decide to stay home, I wouldn't be talking to you. That was part of a plan. And because of that, that's what opened up my passion for healing. Is I had experienced something that was beyond the definition of the textbooks, and at that point I was caught up in a 9-to-5 property management job, looking for a retirement path,
I used to do that too.
and that was not what I was supposed to do. I had a complete 180, and it took me understanding on a personal level how important sound was to me and her uncle, teaching me and facilitating that process. But I literally, personally can testify that I've experienced depression, I've experienced anxiety, I've experienced horrible, tremendous amounts of pain that most people probably would think is unfathomable. And through my own quest to understand how healing works, I can actually use these instruments in my own, to bring about my own state of equilibrium. And so there's tons of people out there like that, but I don't want to speak from them. I feel like if you're going to ask that question, I'd much rather share my personal experience that it was a part of my own healing. And that's the reason why we do this is music and sound are, like I said, they're the fabric of creation. It's the fundamental fabric of everything. And so as human beings, our consciousness is intertwined into the planet. And so when we connect to that primal place where we can sing, where we can dance, we're tapping into us, tapping into each other. So that's what I learned through this, is that music creates connections, sound creates connections. It creates a healing, encompassing vibration that brings us together. And whether it's the cells in our body or it's people together, it does that. And we've always known that, but we just didn't really realize the depth of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So how often would you say that people should use this? Like if they're doing, like you said, you were going through depression before. If someone is going through that and they're in a very negative space emotionally and they're interested in doing this, how often should they go?
For me, I don't like dogma and structure.
Okay.
This is me speaking from personal opinion. Let your intuition guide you to the answer. When you feel that you need anything, it's like a vitamin. If you need some water because you're thirsty, your body's going to tell you, I need water. When you need more plants and veggies, you can kind of sense that your body needs these things in order to balance out. And so I find that once you've experienced sound healing or sound bathing and you know what it's brought about in you, your body will crave that sensation again in a way that you're like, this is like, I need my vitamin C, I need my sound vitamin C, and so it can be as often as some people will do it, like once a week if they have a yoga studio, or they can find yoga studios that offer it. It could be as little as a couple times a year. And so ultimately, I'm huge on people finding that inner voice and listening to that the intuition. The intuition will tell you when you need a sound bath.
I'm wondering for you, like in your healing journey with depression, did you find like group sessions worked for you, or doing it on your own? Or?
We did it all on our own. At the point, when we first started down this path about 10 years ago, about 11 years ago now, like there wasn't really as many resources, right? At this point, we've seen that sound healing, Reiki, like naturopathy, and all these sort of organic concepts have sort of like accelerated their awareness exponentially immediately, it seems like, over the last couple of years. But at the point when we were first doing it, we were dabbling, and we literally, I look at it more of like from a shamanic perspective, is that nature teaches you or God teaches you, and where you're at is your lesson. And so I don't even know how we got to the point where we're doing what we're doing. It's like the voice, the intuition literally led us to this place. And if I look back on the steps of how it even happened, it's kind of hard to even imagine. And I guess Reiki sped it up,
So
truthfully.
You are a practitioner, or you had it done to you?
Truthfully, that's what it was. I've been doing Reiki, and I always forget about that when we start doing the sound thing. But when I started bringing in the Tibetan bowls into my sessions, I was having these experiences with my clients where I was watching their breathing change, and all of a sudden they start like snoring on the table. And I'm like, coming back, I'm like, come on, come back at the end of the session.
I've never had Reiki done, so I don't know.
It's not common. It's not super common to like space out, literally leave your body and like kind of have like a sound bath, sort of out of body experience. And I started hearing that pretty consistently. My clients that were had done their self-work to the point where they integrated their awareness, they were having like blast off experiences where they're snoring on the table. I had to like take like an extra 5 minutes to get them back in the body. And so once that started happening, we were like, let's do this on a bigger level, People are going to outer space and coming back with a story to tell. So that was what it was, is that I've been doing the energy work one-on-one. I've always been a musician, but then I started sort of intuitively mixing the two together and seeing tremendous results. And so it was like finding our soul's passion is like our higher voice, and you kind of just have to listen and see where it's pulling you and then enjoy the ride. That's what happened to get us here.
Can you do this in place of a yoga practice?
I would say so. I mean, let's think about the definition. To me, the definition of yoga is union or balance, right? So doing yoga physically every day isn't really balance, So to me, I like mixing up my practices. So that way you're not in a rut or in a pattern, right? So you can teach yourself that it's okay to mix things up and experience new things, right? So that our belief systems don't keep us trapped in the same old patterns. So You can do it in the place of yoga. I've seen, and I've been a part of classes where we do sound bathing, and then there's people doing yoga in the class. So it could be integrated into the yoga class. It can be a separate thing away from the yoga class.
So they start moving during the sound bathing?
Right.
And that's okay?
And, yep, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
The whole time I was like,
sound
I really want to move right now, but I'm not sure if this is okay.
Yeah, so in those type of classes, you would have like a most of the time they use like a restorative or a yin-based kind of class where you're going inward, right? So you're learning to go deep and let go.
Yeah.
And then you would use some of the more ecstatic sounds to sort of carry you through the poses, and then at the very end you would lie in shavasana, which is, in the receptive, lying on your back, and then you just receive the sounds. So I've seen that quite often where that's integrated into classes. We've been a part of some of those type of things. We usually like to break it apart just because not everybody has the idea of yoga. Not everyone understands yoga. And so we didn't want to isolate people that didn't grasp the concept of yoga and think, well, I can't relax and enjoy meditation, or I can't enjoy sounds because I don't have a background in yoga. So I want to share this. A background in yoga basically means you just understand finding balance inside of yourself, with the world. It's not so dogmatized. And that's my take. But
yeah, no, I understand that. I get you completely, because in the beginning it was like, I need to do this move perfectly, and then you discover that's really not what yoga is about.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get
exactly. And I found that is true with all energy work, or all anything that has to do with our consciousness. Anytime we try to overly define something and say it has to be a certain way, that's an ego trip, right? Like if we live in a part of a world where there's a merciful creator, I like to think that merciful creator is not an authoritarian that gets mad at you if you draw or say something incorrectly, right? It's about intention. It's about frequency. It's about feeling. Mm-hmm. It's about being. Right?
Yeah. So how did someone become a sound healer? Like, did you get certified?
I did, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I had a background in music theory and playing music and performance, but getting certified does help. Ultimately, experiential knowledge in this sort of a field, if you experience and you play around with the instruments, I'm not going to say that someone has to be certified for that, because that's some kind of like dogmatic control system. If you really understand what the frequency does to you, you understand what it brings out in other people, that's knowledge. And you can either gain that knowledge through direct experience, or you can have a teacher. There are teachers out there. We teach. So
you teach
we
other
teach
sound healers? Oh,
exactly.
Nice.
So I mean, it's out there. I would recommend that if people are curious about it, just research first how everything is wave patterns and sound. Like on a base sort of fundamental level, if you begin to understand that the universe itself is vibrating sounds, then the intent behind the sound healing or sound therapy makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But in order to get into it, if you feel like your heart's pulling you in that direction, just go online, type in, sound therapy certification or sound certification, or start down the rabbit hole with shamanic traditions about people dancing around fires and see where that takes you.
Yeah. You mentioned your uncle. He's a sound healer too?
He was, yeah. He actually passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So that's okay, and that's part of the reason why we're passing his story on, is that if you Google Robert Anthony Aviles, you can find him. He's on stage playing his violin, and he used to play in front of thousands of people in Japan and that sort of thing. So he was the one that lit the fire under our butts. He was the one that made me realize that my passion and my purpose that she loved about me was actually intertwined with my spirituality.
Yeah.
And once we kind of, connect the dots, I'm a firm believer that our life purpose and our passion is on the path we're at. It's not somewhere outside of us.
Right.
So once you start becoming grateful for everything that you are, and for whoever's reminded you of that, it gets easier.
Yeah, and I think the more, because what we're talking about in my community a lot right now is the book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and having a purpose in your life. And I've heard some people say to me, even older people, that they don't feel like they have a purpose. But I feel the more you do modalities like this and meditation and stuff like that, you go within and you find that purpose, or the purpose finds you.
Absolutely.
However it works. That's awesome.
Same thing, yeah, absolutely.
If you want to be a sound healer, just connect with Brandon. He can help you out. So I guess speaking of why, what your why is, I'm gathering, pass on, your mentor's legacy.
Yeah.
What, is there something more to it? Do you have an ultimate goal with where you want this to take you?
Absolutely. It's ecstatic union. It's about bringing us back together. To me, like all
humanity.
It's about bringing us together in the local tribe. You know, the shamanic tradition is that, you know, if you have a sick member of the village, it's because the entire village has become unsick. So I like to think about opportunities where we can bring the community together, and you have to create a fire, right? A fire is sound, or like a primitive gathering, right? So if we create the fire, the souls will gather. And if we can gather with the same intent, which is love and harmony and healing, then our local communities, it's like neurons in the brain, right? You get one new neuron and it creates a new neural network. So I feel like, to me, my passion is to activate different people out there who resonate with what we're saying so that they can become a neural network in their community, right? And so we can spread this idea that we're one, beyond separation, beyond dogma, that we're here to love and honor one another through connections, right? Like, the best part of human beings is connecting and sharing and creating and loving.
And man, is it so hard to do that right now, right? Because, I mean, with social media kind of taking over our lives, and we're so caught up into that, and then all the news, we're so caught up into all of that. And I mean, have you noticed a difference, like in terms of, you know, just people, what they're getting out of these sessions since with all the change?
I think what's happening is, when you look around the world and you see things that you wish you could change, not everybody sees things that they wish they can change, and not everybody sees how we could change it. So my understanding of this is that whoever can see what needs to be changed is the one who's responsible for the change. Only those who know can be responsible for creating knowledge for others, right? So it's through our direct experiences and through our being that others can understand that there is more to this reality. So that's basically my answer to that. Hopefully that makes sense. Is that it's about just invigorating our sense of purpose. And like you had said it's about purpose. And our purpose really is about, like, each of our individual healing. If we make it all about me or about you, that's useless. It gets to a point where you're in a dead end. You're not going to get any farther in your healing process because it wasn't about me or you at all. It wasn't. We're collective conscious beings where our feelings and our emotions are shareable. And so if we know that the way we feel is being broadcast to our brothers and sisters on the planet, and it's being picked up by the planet itself, and it's being mirrored around, mindfulness becomes the priority of the day. And so if we're just aware of what we're thinking and what we're feeling, I feel like that's how we start to fix the world around us, is that many people are afraid to feel. And we think that by feeling vulnerable or by having a bad day that makes us less than or imperfect. But quite frankly, if you have a world full of callous people who don't have emotions, what world do we have left? Right? So somebody has to be able to grieve for humanity's suffering. And it's not grieving for them, it's really actually grieving with them. Right? Because some of us have become so callous we are afraid to cry. So if you feel like crying, cry, right? Because emotions are what make us special in this third dimensional plane of existence. It's because we have this inflection of duality that causes these, you know, maybe short-term or long-term feelings, but we have to embrace them. And if we can embrace those feelings, then we give each other strength. Instead of reacting to each other's emotions, we can start to support one another's emotions from a place of compassion, right, and gracefulness. And like you know that you probably started off with a place we weren't perfect. You know, we're not perfect. It's working through the crap in our lives and finding out the value in it that makes you reach a place where you can understand other people and their value. And if we don't judge what's happening in the world, we're understanding. And I would really like to pass that forward, that if we have any judgment about leaders or people or this, that, and the other thing, we're missing the mark a little bit. Because this world is it's a learning experience. And so anyone who's teaching you something, whether or not you like it or not, they're a teacher, honor the teaching. You know? And if we can honor the teaching, then what are they really doing so wrong, right? And I'm not trying to, you know, I think you follow where I'm going with this train of thought.
And that's the hard part about it. I went to a stress fair here in Lemur Park. It was at yesterday, and there was a whole conversation about, like, for example, with the Me Too movement, the offender and the offended, the victim, coming together and having a conversation, a healing moment, right? So, like, for all the criminals in the prison system, if we had something, you know, set up where they could speak to their victims and just have like a session like that, or a few of them, so that, whoever offended could learn from that experience, could grow from that experience, what would that do as a healing to our community? And it's very tough. And that's what I hear you saying around the same lines, is like to hear someone that you feel like you radically do not agree with, and they're so agitating to your spirit, but still finding the nugget of wisdom.
Because they're solidifying your intent of your purpose. Because if you don't resonate with someone else, no matter what their purpose is, that's solidifying your intent. And in a world where we have free will, right, in a third dimensional context, sometimes you need someone to remind you that your choice is valid. And so I fully believe that evil as we see it in the world is magic is willed by the person, it's willed by everyone. And so I don't want to rock the boat with this, but I feel like black magic, you will it on yourself. And so it's through hate and through fear and through anger and through these sort of emotional processes that we open up the volition of free will for negative beings, so to speak, to do these things to us, but it's only because they exist inside of our consciousness. And I'm not going to say, like, when I started off anxious and depressed, I was freaked out about the world affairs, like, what are we going to do about the world leaders? What are we going to do about these things? And then my understanding of it is that you start to move beyond the dogma of the third dimensional context. When I say third dimensional context, I mean black and white. The universe is not just black and white. And so every time we start trying to define our experiences through a lens of duality, as mindfulness beings, we know that duality is not the lens we're supposed to use to filter our experiences through primarily. And if we're filtering through only one side of duality, then it's time for some alchemy. Yeah. Meaning, like, this is the crap that we're dealing with, what's its opposite? Yeah. And if I can look at its opposite, now I'm seeing middle ground. And if I can see middle ground, now I'm seeing through the eyes of the observer, which is non-egoic, it's non-dogmatic. And we can see that everything is happening on this planet in order to inspire change. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying where we're at right now is perfect, it's not. But where we came from in the past to now is accelerating in a more positive place very quickly. In my understanding, I'm not seeing things rapidly falling apart, I'm seeing things rapidly coming together. I'm hoping you can sort of sense that too, is that when we look in the world around us, we live in a world where there's earth, right? And in the earth, sometimes you have decay before you rebuild. And actually, all the time you have decay before you rebuild. And then what comes out of that decay is beautiful. So as humans, we get so caught up in the dogma of the decay that we're missing the beauty that's supposed to be popping out of there. And so that's what's happening, is everything's falling apart.
It's so deep what you're saying that people will need to rewind this, sit with it, meditate on it. And an analogy that I just said to my husband, like just this past week, is, when you put clothes in the washing machine, right, first it has to be agitated before it can get clean, right? So we're kind of in the midst of agitation right now, which is necessary.
Yeah. So I'm just here to, be an ambassador of frequency. And so much love to all you, at home, realize your value, realize your importance. If you start to share that love with the people who are in your life right now, you'll see the value of your life. It will exponentially increase second by second.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.